So a couple of weeks ago, I did a video looking at the perfect midfield partners for Bruno Fernandes. We looked at 5 different players, and I said if there's anyone that you want me to watch in more detail, then just let me know. And I decided to do it myself. And the player I wanted to focus on was Lucien Agoume, because oh my days, this guy can play, and he has sort of propelled himself towards the top of my shortlist for Manchester United midfielders this summer. Now, not only has Agoume sort of shot up my list, he's also actually changed my opinion of him. You see, when I first did the video, I'd only watched 3 to 5 90-minute matches. Since then, I've watched him a lot more, including the Euro Under-21 tournament, and I'm really impressed with him on the ball. Although, actually, we are going to kind of start off with a bit of a negative, and that is just the fact that I don't feel Agoume is a first phase master, even though he's pretty good in the first phase. And what I mean by that is, he's competent, he's going to look after the ball, he's going to shield the ball, he is reliable, he's not going to give the ball away in dangerous areas, so he will help you out in the first phase. But the reason I say he's not a master is because he's not someone to reliably drop a shoulder and look to turn past someone and carry the ball forward. So good in the first phase without being amazing, a little bit safe, often going backwards with the first touch. And we can see that in a couple of clips like this. By the way, we are looking at all of these clips using Once Video Analyzer. There will be a link in the description. Make sure to check it out. Anyway, what we can see is Agoume in a deep midfield position here. Actually, currently, in this moment, the deepest central midfielder. And you can see what I'm talking about with being safe. You know, he's not trying to spin into this space here. He's trying to take the first touch safe back towards his own goal, trying to look after the ball. This is actually a slightly similar trait to Ugarte at Manchester United. He is also someone who does this. The thing I would say with Agoume, though, is he looks after the ball better. Some of that is because of his size. He can kind of deal with contact a little bit better. But I also feel that he scans better before he receives the ball. So when the ball is coming into these positions, he knows these players are behind him. So he knows which direction he needs to take his touch to evade the pressure. But again, it is a little bit safe. And I think this next example is actually the best example, because he receives the ball in this position here. And you can actually see he's got a bit of room to turn into. Now, of course, on a pitch, the intensity is played differently to what we can see in a picture. So this space would eventually close. But I do think there is room there for Agoume to turn into. But he doesn't. His first touch is once again safe and looking to play backwards. So, you know, is Agoume a player which comes into the Manchester United midfield and solves our first phase problems? No, but he does make us more competent and more secure. Now, in terms of talking about a player which has kind of shot up my rankings for Manchester United future midfielders, this feels like a bit of a meh start, right? He's good in the first phase, but not amazing. But actually, it's in the next phase where he's really impressive. Now, when I first mentioned Agoume a couple of weeks ago, I said I said that he was a player who I don't think you run the game through him. I don't think he's an orchestrator on the ball. I don't think he's a player that you give a lot of touches, because I didn't think he was immediately on face value the most amazing passer. However, I'll admit it, I was a little bit wrong. Having watched him more, particularly for France, where he has had a lot of touches, sort of dictating the French midfield a bit more, given more responsibility on the ball, I think Agoume has been really, really impressive. And what I love from what I've seen is the way he can use both feet to pass the ball. I love a player who can take the ball on the back foot and then pass with the other foot, because what it allows you to do is manipulate the opposition. So let's say the ball is coming across from your midfield partner, and the ball comes across like this, and you let the ball roll across onto your right foot. What that does is it causes the opposition to shift, because they think you've let the ball roll across, so you're going to play this way. So what they do is they shift. What Agoume does, though, is with his first touch, he sort of bounces the ball back onto his other foot, because he's two-footed. So his movement is initially has deceived the opposition. It's moved them a little bit wider. Then what he'll do is use the other foot to punch the pass back through the pitch. It can also work the other way around. For example, the ball could come inside the pitch like this. He could take the first touch with the left foot, implying that he's going to go centrally, so the opposition will close off. And then what he will do is bounce the touch back this way and then play out the other side. So what he's doing is he is shifting the opposition simply because of what foot he is using to control the ball. And that's impressive. It's a very, very subtle detail, but it makes him really effective on the ball. And you can see it in a position like this, exactly what we're talking about here. The ball is coming from left to right. So what Agoume does is he lets the ball roll across his body and uses his right foot. But he actually, on this occasion, uses his right foot to take the ball back inside the pitch. So he bounces the first touch inside the pitch, and what that does is it causes the opposition to narrow off, because they don't want him to drive through the middle. However, because he is two-footed, he can then use his left foot to then clip the ball out to the far side to the space that he has created with his deception. We've got another example here, and this time it is going to be the reverse. It's going to be the other way around, the other foot. See him here in the middle of the pitch in the same match, and as he receives the ball in the middle of the park, you can see him doing a little bit of scanning work, which is really important. We'll cover that another day. But as he receives the ball in here, he takes the first touch with the left foot, and then the second touch is going to be with the right foot to punch the ball through the opposition. One touch with one foot, the pass with the next foot. It allows you to move the ball really quickly, whilst also sort of baiting the opposition in. Because of your first touch, they feel like they can come and get you, but your second touch, passing with the other foot, is just going to take them out of the game and again allow you to progress the ball forward like this. And this example is really nice. Again, taking the ball on the back foot, receiving with his left foot, drawing the opposition in towards him, and then using the other foot, so on this occasion the right foot, to then punch the ball through the heart of the opposition. I love players that do this. Now, one of the reasons why I love a player that can do this so much is because it allows you to increase the intensity, the tempo with which you move the ball, and in the case of Agoume, that is very often going to be in a forward direction. He's not a player who wants to play sideways for the sake of it. He wants to go forward and adventure as early as possible. Now, I don't necessarily mean that he's like Pirlo, you know, sitting deep in the midfield and spraying passes left, right and centre. He's still not that sort of player, but he is someone who will quickly look to play with an intensity, a tempo, and a progressive tempo as well, which I think is important. Again, if we're talking about a Bruno Fernandes partner, having another midfielder who can sort of have some of the burden of progressing the ball would be really useful. The other thing Agoume brings though is if he can't quickly get that ball off, he can still protect the ball because he uses his body really well, and he sort of gets himself over the ball, so his body over the ball, so that the opposition can't really tackle him. So when he's taken the first touch and can't necessarily get the pass off, and the opposition players are suddenly close to him, he uses his body really well. He's a tall guy, he's got pretty broad shoulders, so he can sort of hold off the opposition. But it's, for me, the way he gets over the ball and then sort of quickly bursts forward and knocks it past the opponent and moves into the space. Now, for this reason, there is an argument that he may not actually be a proper number 6, you know, like a solo midfielder, a solo pivot at the base of a 4-3-3, for example. He may not be that sort of player. It may actually suit him more to play in a double pivot, which is exactly what Manchester United do. Now, the other thing that I just quickly wanted to add with regards to Agoume on the ball, before we look at the defensive stuff, was his passing variety. I'm just going to put some clips on screen here. You can see it's a different type of pass that he is playing every time. And again, that's a really good sign of a good footballer. A player that can use different parts of the foot, doesn't just have one pass that he relies upon. He's just great at moving the ball forward. He's just a very effective, a very efficient player that can move the ball in different directions, which of course moves the opposition in different directions. It makes you unpredictable, and that makes him a really good weapon. Now, when we talk about Agoume from more of a defensive point of view, we are going to focus on his physicality, his size, and the way that he uses his body. And the reason we're going to do that is because, firstly, he's got a great physical profile, but secondly, because I do think mentally he can improve himself a little bit in terms of, largely, I feel his reading of the play is good, but it's not always perfect. Not always. Of course, he's only 23 years old, so he's got time to develop, but I think that is something that he can work on. In terms of his size, it's the long legs. We were speaking about this the other week. It's just really difficult to get past him. Whether that be trying to dribble past him, where he's a really good 1-versus-1 defender, he doesn't overcommit to the tackle early, he waits for his moment to strike, and then those long legs can sort of poke the ball away from the opposition. If it's not that, it's intercepting passes. Again, you feel that you can squeeze that ball through there because Agoume's not actually that close to it. But again, because of those long legs, he can just reach out and get a ball that doesn't actually look like it should be his. They're not bad passes, but he still manages to intercept them incredibly regularly. A lot of interceptions in his game, and that's something good. Again, for Manchester United, trying to break up the opposition's play, I think Agoume is ticking so many boxes of what United need. The final thing that I like about Agoume from a defensive point of view is also the fact that he can cover large distances. We've spoken about his long legs, and that means that basically you can cover a lot of ground without actually taking that many steps. If you're like me and you're really short, you have to take about 100 steps to get anywhere. Whereas when you're tall and you've got long legs, you just sort of stride over that distance and you eat up the ground. And that makes Agoume a really effective player defensively. You can see his recoveries, regularly tracking back, and again using that long reach to nick the ball away from the opposition. And what's great about that is it makes him a really good defensive player in two different ways. So he can play in short spaces where his long legs are just too much for the opposition because they can't quite get past him, but also in large spaces he can cover the ground and he can dominate, which makes life so much easier for his teammates. I think you see why I like him. So yes, that is that, a sort of combination of the different reasons why I think Agoume could be such a good signing for Manchester United. And that's without even talking about his fee, which seems like it's going to be relatively low this summer. So it almost can't go wrong. He's played in a few different football cultures and environments, which is good for a young player. He's learned different sides of the game. Does he have areas where he needs work? Yeah, he does. Like I said, he's not a first phase specialist, despite being secure. I think on the ball, he could actually maybe be even more adventurous with the carries because he's got the body, he's got the frame, he's got the technique to do it. He just doesn't do it that regularly. Perhaps his next coach will dictate that, whether he becomes more of a holding player who sits a little bit deeper, or whether he becomes more of an 8 who is given that license to carry the ball forward. And again, just defensively, I think there are moments where the awareness isn't amazing. But again, when you're signing a 23-year-old for a sort of cut price, you really can't complain. Okay, so the outro sort of got ruined there. You probably heard the dog start barking. There's a delivery. You know what he's like. But yeah, I like Agoume. I think he's a great player. I think he's definitely someone that Manchester United should be watching. And I think when you bring someone in for that fee, it reduces the pressure as well, particularly with his age. That would be important. He can be a squad player. I think quite quickly he would break into the Manchester United starting 11 and become a key man for us. And I also genuinely believe that would be the case at a few different clubs. I think he could fit into several different Premier League teams. I wonder if what might happen is he might just go to that team which is like typically that level below, like an Aston Villa or something, even though they are better than us but are sort of perceived differently to Manchester United. But if I was United, I'd be all over this. I'd be sending my scouts to watch him every week, and I would be testing the waters with a bid because I think he's a good player. I think he raises the level of the squad massively, and not only raises the level of the squad, but I think pretty quickly the starting 11. But yeah, the dog is barking again, so I am going to wrap the video up there. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.